How long is this video gonna be? Because
I'm
I'm
ready to close it out.
melting.
Me too.
Okay.
I'm sweating like crazy.
Hey guys.
What's going on, family? What's going on? So we wanted to take this video today and just talk about communication within relationships, effective communication, and talk about some of our journey with that, and some things God has shown us, some things we've learned, and how it can be applied to relationships, both interpersonal, which is the whole realm of relationships, but also romantically as well.
Yeah, I think communication is one of those things that it's a skill that like you need to know it, like whether you aspire to be married or not, but especially when you're like dealing with somebody in that regard, like if you don't have this locked down, or if you don't at least have a mindset where you're willing to work on it, then it can cause you a lot of issues.
Yeah, and the reality of it is that we all need to learn how to communicate.
Yeah.
And why is this important? This is important because we're all different people with different ideas, and for us to exist and coexist together, we have to know how to convey and articulate what we feel, and we also have to have the skills to be able to ascertain what other people are communicating to us as well, if we're going to have successful relationships, like I said, whether that be with family, friends, co-workers, professionally, or of course the most popular, which is romantically.
And the reality of like, I feel like just jumping into it, what I have discovered with our communication and in our relationship is that I feel like sometimes when someone doesn't communicate in the way that we're familiar with, it becomes a threat, and it's like it becomes like a bad thing, when it's like it's not even that. Differences in communication style is okay. Like it's okay, and that's something that I had to learn, is that you just have to like we both grew up in under different circumstances, like even though we're equally yoked, we have a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences as well, a lot of cultural differences, a lot of differences as well that contribute into like how we communicate, how we perceive the world, how we present ourselves in the world. And you have to be able to understand like your partner and like kind of the background that they come from, to be able to understand the communication style that they have, and to be able to adapt to it, because there is like a level of compromise I feel like that has to be made, to be able to adapt to the other person's while still staying true to yours as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I would say the first element of that is, whether it's romantically or not, realizing that if you have too much pride in self, too much pride in your ideals, you're not going to have a willingness and an open or soft heart to other people's feelings, their perspectives, their perceptions, and you're not going to have a real openness to what they're trying to convey. And a lot of that sometimes comes from trauma. It comes from previous relationships. It comes from parental family trauma, or just maybe you grew up not having a voice and not feeling heard, and so when you talk to people, if it gets emotional, you'll kind of recess back into that person that you used to be, which will cause you to raise a defense mechanism to where you're not able to eloquently actually communicate, or even be in a place where you're ready to receive somebody else's perspective.
Yeah, and I think like one thing that you kind of touched on that's like important in relationships in general is just the ability to be flexible, to not have this fixed mindset, which I feel like, just speaking from like the perspective of a woman, I feel like the way that like culture has shaped our expectations in dating, we're so fixed in what it is that we're demanding, which isn't a bad thing. It's good to have standards, but sometimes like that fixed mindset can be a barrier and a hindrance in your relationship. And so you do have to have the ability to be flexible, and that ability shows up even while you're communicating, and in like how you and your partner communicate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And another aspect of it that we have to understand is that, with men and women, we are different, right? And we communicate differently. And a lot of times, as a man, you feel like, okay, if I communicate this way, say, for example, it's logically, right? I'm going to look at things a certain way. A lot of the times, if we're communicating with our women or with somebody else who maybe doesn't look at it that way, what we do is we kind of cast down their perspective as not important, or not as important as what we're feeling. Or what we're perceiving about a situation. And of course, that's not the right thing to do, but it feels like it is, because when you go through life looking at everything through only your lens and how you perceive it to be, what'll happen is you'll have great relationships with yourself, but failing relationships with anybody who doesn't perceive or see life the way that you do.
How do you get over that then as a
Yeah.
man? Like, how do you get to the point where you start to value other people's perspectives even when they differ from your own?
Yeah. I'll say, one of the things that taught me that or really solidified that for me was working collectively in groups, whether it's on a project or with other people in general, because you start to realize that, okay, I may have this perspective that works this way, right? Or even with clients. And it's like, okay, I may look at a situation a certain way, and I may think, okay, the way that you solve this situation is based upon how I look at it, until you're met with a situation where somebody brings a solution or brings an avenue that you never thought about, and you realize, wait, I never thought about that. Yeah, because you're not that person and you don't have the full picture, right? Every situation has an emotional part, has a psychological part. It has a different components and pieces to it that you may not always have in your repertoire, right? Also, another thing that's been, that taught me this was being a father, right? Having a young son, it's like a lot of things that in his world, when he doesn't get apple juice because it's 7:30 at night and it's too late, it's real anger. He's really expressing because he feels he wants this thing, right? And if I just look at it and approach him as I would from a parental standpoint, it's never going to make sense to him or convey what needs to be conveyed. But when I put myself in his shoes, I can now put myself in a position where I can explain it from a purview that would relate to him, because I have an understanding of how he looks at it. Right. Which with men and women, there's an opportunity for us to do that as well, where we can say, okay, if I were in her shoes, which it takes love. It takes, honestly, of course, the Holy Spirit, really, but it takes, somebody to really have a true care and yearning for a person, for them to really step back from themselves and put yourself in somebody else's shoes who is not you, and say, okay, if I were in that position, what are the reasons that I could potentially feel what they're feeling? And once you do that, now I feel like it'll be easier for you to respond to what they're feeling, because you put it as, it's from your perspective.
What you just said is a reason why it's so important to value your single season and to utilize your single season, because that ability to be able to like essentially die to yourself and to be able to put somebody else first is kind of what we learn as we like walk with God, is like how to die to ourselves and to live for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I feel like I remember like, being single and hearing so many messages about like, this exactly. And just feeling like it was cliche, and just feeling like you guys don't get it. Like you guys are married now, and now you forgot what it's like to struggle. But it's not even supposed to be a struggle. Like if you use that time wisely, there's so much value that you can get, like whether you're a man or a woman, there's so much value that you can get from using that time wisely, that it will manifest in your relationship. Like how you use your time before you get into a relationship will show up when you do get into a relationship. So I think that's something to consider.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree. And I think also too, one of the big points of this is when it comes to communicating and having effective communication, that I think what people run into a lot of the times that keeps them from being able to do that is just a closed and hardened heart, right? It's a sense of being closed off to anything that is not how you see it, right? And what happens is when you have your heart closed, you lack full picture information. And when you don't have the full picture, you're never going to be able to fully communicate with somebody because you're closed off, right? And it's this communication that is the binding glue, for everything that we do. If you think about, making certain foods, eggs are a binder for certain foods, right? And without it, you can cook this meal, try to put it together, but it's never going to stick because there's no binder, right? And when you have two people, it's like, okay, yeah, you can have two great elements, but if they're not able to communicate with each other, they're not going to, get that task. And we kind of see this in the Bible, even with the people, the Tower of Babel, right? God had to take away he could have took away anything. He could have took away their arms. He could have took away their hands. He could have took away anything, but what he chose to take away was their communication, because he said, this people is one, you're unified. And so with that, because they're able to communicate, they were able to reach this goal that they had, which was to get into, build a tower into heaven. But I think it's interesting that he took away the communication piece, from to them to change their languages actually, to where they now spoke different languages, which is a lot of times what we see with interpersonal relationships. It's like we speak different languages.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's been a topic that has been a reoccurring theme in our relationship, that I would imagine to be a reoccurring theme in other relationships.
Yes.
Is, are you able to speak your partner's language? Like, we talk about like love languages, and like I feel like it even goes beyond the five love languages that are given. Like, I don't want to go into the specifics, but you have to like really be able to observe your partner and also communicate with your partner so that you can understand what their language is, because sometimes it's not even a matter of intention. A lot of times, I feel like a lot of times it's never a matter of intention. I hope not. If it is a question of intention, you probably shouldn't be in that relationship.
Yeah.
But so that eliminates that aspect of things, but still it's like, okay, well, the impact is still like, the outcome is still negative sometimes, even though we know that the intention is not bad. And so being able to study and to speak your partner's language so that you are able to communicate your intentions in a way where they're able to recognize it and receive it, number one. But number two, also, on the other person, being able to adapt as well, and to have grace as the other person is learning, and to just reach a compromise where your understanding is no longer just about you. It's you and another person now. So as this person is making sacrifices and compromises to meet you where you're at, you're also making sacrifices and compromises to meet them where they're at by speaking their language as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we had a situation kind of similar to that where there was a discussion we had, and she was feeling something about, the communication and everything. And I was more so focused on the logical part of the situation. And something she said to me was like, we're trying to get to the solution and get to the answer X, Y, and Z. But until emotionally I'm answered to, or emotionally, her emotions are approached and handled and everything, in a sense of like being able to handle with care and be able to understand and be able to communicate and relate to it and validate it. Until that's done, getting to the answer, the solution was going to do us no good. Right. And it took me to be able to get out of the mind frame and the mindset that I was in on, okay, let's just X, Y, and Z, right? Let's just get to this and get to that. It took me to get out of that and to be able to say, okay, wait, let me approach her where she is with this. And it didn't happen overnight, right? It's not something I immediately got, but it was something that she taught me through, me seeing that situation. So now going forward, it's something that, okay, when I see a situation that looks similar to that, now I'm able to, move how I'm coming off, whatever, so that I'm making sure that I'm being able to get what she's communicating to me effectively, and that I'm able to communicate back to her effectively.
I totally agree. I totally agree. We can honestly talk about communication for so long. Like, there's so many topics to cover when it comes to communication, but we want to hear from you guys. So like, what questions do you guys have for us in regards to like communication? What topics do you want to see us cover? Things that, we've learned in our relationship that God is teaching us, or like, talk to us. What do you want us to cover? What do you want us to minister to you guys about?
Let us know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And even if it's like, specific situations where, you guys would like us to speak to, how we've dealt with it, the things God has shared with us. We don't know everything. We're just about to embark upon a year being together. But I do believe that even in our lives before meeting each other, God has kind of planting a lot of seeds in us for this specific ministry, because it is ministry to us. And we want to see couples, we want to see young married couples, we want to see people gearing towards a life of marriage and a life of Christ. And for us to be able to speak to a lot of, to kind of quiet down a lot of these voices that are making men and women hate each other nowadays. There's so many different voices out there that are speaking of how we should be apart, but there's not a lot of voices that we see that is speaking to how we mend together ourselves and bind ourselves together in unity.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, please follow our Instagram page, Equally Yoked with J&J.
Yes.
And then stay tuned for our next video. We have some really amazing things coming ahead, you guys. Like, bear with us. Like, God is like working with us, and he's working on us, and he's working through us. So stay tuned, plug in, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys later.